Buongiorno a tutti, benvenuti. Sorry, I'm not going to go on in Italian, but thank you very much for coming. I'm very happy to be here with you this morning. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much to the Excellence team for inviting me in the name of the Osmothe. And so you might be a perfume specialist or enlightened amateurs who like to learn more about perfumes. But have you ever wondered how easy is it to recreate the fragrances of the past? Where can I smell them? How can I be sure that the perfume I'm presented with is the same as the one I used to smell? These are the questions I'd like to answer today. And yes, there is an institution in charge of recreating the perfumes of the past, called the Osmothe. No, it's not easy. In fact, it's extremely difficult to remake the perfumes. And how do I know if the perfume is close to or far from the original? To find out, you have to follow your intuition and also to at least ask questions about the methods used to remake it. So today, we will see first a presentation of the Osmothe and then a reflection on the Nomen project and the recreation of a few perfumes. What is the Osmothe? It's a unique place in the world. Today, the Osmothe holds over 6,000 scents in its collection, including more than 850 that are no longer available on the market. And it encompasses the heritage of French perfumery, but also international perfumery, enabling us to retrace the saga of the fragrance industry from when the very first synthetic molecules were introduced up until contemporary times. The Osmothe has become the guardian of a legacy, a repository of old fragrance formula, raw materials that can no longer be found, and forgotten bases, making it a cultural center for perfumery history. So it was a pioneer in the preservation and transmission of the heritage of perfumery, and it's been created in 1990, so more than 34 years ago now, by a group of perfumers. So the collection today holds 6,000 perfumes, as I told you, and within those perfumes, 400 are masterpieces in the original edition. They have been reweighed from the original formula. And I will come back on this notion. In order to recreate the perfumes, we need formulas. So we keep hundreds of formulas that are preserved for posterity. And we have also hundreds of disappeared raw materials because they are forbidden or restricted. They can't be used anymore in today's perfumery, but we need them in order to be able to recreate the perfumes. So here you have a few examples of the perfumes we have recreated, like Fougère Royale, l'Origan, le Chypre de Coty, Joy de Jean Patou, etc. So what are the Osmothe's missions? There are three missions: to keep alive and develop a cultural heritage perfume. I have to stress that it is an independent, non-profit organization dedicated to the olfactory cultural heritage, and it is for the benefit of all. It's very important because the first mission of the Osmothe is to preserve and to protect those perfumes, but it is also to transmit and inspire, to share with the public, with the perfumers, of course, but also with the general public, this heritage. And the third mission is also research. And I will come back on this special point. The first mission is preservation. So we have a cellar, what we call a cellar, with a lot of perfumes and concentrates. In order to protect them, we have to store them in optimized conditions. And you know that the enemies of the fragrances are the change of temperature, the oxygen, and the light. So we keep them in optimized condition in this cellar in order for them to live longer. We also protect the formulas that are entrusted by brands or right holders, and there is a very strict protocol access to guarantee the confidentiality of the formulas. And also we have a collection of 1,500 raw materials and rare bases. But don't think that the Osmothe is only for perfumes of the past. It also collects today's perfumes. And it's a living collection because a lot of perfumes that are launched today will be forgotten tomorrow. And I hope we can have in the future the perfumes that are here today, still in 30 years. So the second mission is transmission. Transmission is through olfactory conferences like today, but in 1990 it was a very innovative concept, and we can say that the Osmothe one was the first one to organize olfactory conferences. Today we organize around 100 olfactory conferences a year, and it's both in France and abroad. We participate to exhibitions, symposiums, fairs like today, and it's always a pleasure to share the knowledge about perfume with the public. That enables us to introduce the perfumery heritage to many different audiences. Of course, it's very important for the professionals to be able to smell the perfumes of the past, because you think of painters who go to museums to discover the paintings of artists who have worked before them. But it's the same for perfumers. Where do they go to smell the perfumes, the history of their art? The Osmothe is open, of course, first to the perfumers who want to discover perfumes that no longer exist. It's open, of course, to students, especially in perfumery, but not only, and to the general public, and of course to all perfume lovers, and I guess you're many here today. And we also are very happy to share the knowledge and with the researchers, because it's very important for the researchers who work in universities and who write a lot about perfumes also to smell them, to have a sensory relationship with each perfume. So the third mission is actually research, and for nearly 3 years now, we have created an interdisciplinary scientific committee with a team of researchers coming from different fields: philosophy, history, art history, chemistry, and we are a bunch of 10 people working on the knowledge of the history of perfume in its olfactory aspect. And of course, we're still looking for perfumes of the past, because we would like to expand the collection and have more formulas, of course, and more perfumes of the past that has been reconstituted, recreated from recipes as well. So what is the method, the Osmothe's method to recreate perfumes? The Osmothe method is called what we call reweigh perfumes. What does it mean, reweigh? It's to take the formula with the exact quantities of each ingredient and reweigh exactly what is written on the piece of paper or on the computer. You can have a look here at the video, and that shows very well the process of reweighing a perfume, repeser. So the question is, what do we do when we don't have the formula? Because we don't have all the formulas of the perfume, of the 6,000 perfumes. When we don't have the formula, we can ask the perfume houses like IFF, Givaudan, Symrise, and etc. We have partnerships with those perfume houses, and they reweigh the perfumes from the original formula and send the concentrate or the perfume to the Osmothe. And we are very thankful for that. With the time, we have decided to open the initial collection to new sections of the olfactory heritage. Because, as you know, olfactory heritage is a very important subject today. And we have decided to open to historical reconstitutions and precisely the Heritage Smell Library that has been established by the Odoropa group. You must know about it. And we have decided also to open to functional perfumeries like shower gels, shampoos, etc., because some of them are really part of the olfactory heritage of a group, of a nation, of a culture. So and maybe one day we will open to the olfactory art. As you know, it's something that is expanding today, that is getting more and more attention, and maybe the Osmothe will preserve also the formulas of those artworks. So in order to recreate the perfumes, I told you about the importance of the formula, and the formula is something that is still very much secret. So the Osmothe is entrusted with the formulas, and the protocol of access is very strict. What is the difference between a formula and a recipe? I will use both names in my presentation, but a formula is what exists from the end of the 19th century with a precise list of ingredients, and all the grams of the ingredients are clearly specified on the formula. And it's usually on 100 grams or 1,000 grams, but it's very precise. And it's unlike the recipes where you have information about the ingredients, but sometimes very vague, and we'll see it a bit later. So to recreate the perfumes, to reweigh it, we must be aware also of the history of perfumery, of the use of the ingredients in the past, which one were used by which perfumer. And so it's important that perfumers transmit their knowledge to each other and share the information about the perfumery in the past. So you must have noticed that in the last years, there has been a proliferation of historical perfume reconstitutions. And we have decided with a scientific committee to provide information on the method used in the various cases. So it's called the Nomen Project and the nomenclature. I'm going to present it today because it's a recent work, still in process, but we wanted to introduce today these different categories. So the Nomen classification is a classification of fragrant compositions and perfumes with historical purposes. I have to stress that it's not a proposal for classifying odors, but rather a theoretical framework that applies to actual olfactory realization that claim a historical dimension. And it is based on the methods employed to, and the sources and resources available to carry out the undertaking, and not on the olfactory assessment of the result, of course. So what is, it's a classification with 5 entries. It's bilingual, both French and English, and it's not prescriptive. It's only a way to describe the methods that have been used to recreate those historical perfumes. What is the aim? The aim is mostly to inform the public and also work with the museums, who will know better what they display, and then this classification could become a reference for a lot of cultural institutions. The 5 categories of the Nomen classification are reweighings. So I already stressed what a reweigh is, and the reweighing. It occurs when the perfumer is in possession of a formula detailing the raw materials, proportions, and techniques. It concerns nominally identified perfumes, generally associated with a perfumer and a perfume house. The adaptation is the other category we are going to investigate today, is aimed to a specific perfume for which the perfumer has not a formula but a recipe, with all that this implies in terms of vagueness about raw materials, proportions, and also techniques. Reconstructions. The term reconstruction is used to describe the process of remaking the perfumes on the basis of residues. You know, when you find an old jar of perfume and you want to analyze the inside, the chemical residue, then you get a profile, a chemical profile, and you can recreate the perfume or try to recreate the perfume from this analysis. You have examples like the perfume that was called from Cleopatra in Tel Al-Timai in Egypt, Parfum de George Sand in l'Osmothe. Even in the Osmothe, most of the recreations of perfumes are reweighing, but we have also some exceptions, and that's also very interesting for us. Interpretations is when you take some images, some pictures, some elements of a text to create a perfume of the past. So you have olfactory elements, but the goal is not to reproduce a specific perfume whose existence has been attested, but rather to convey the smell of a place, of a person, or a person. For example, in the Osmothe, we have also a perfume called the perfume of Marie Antoinette, but of course it's a perfume that has been inspired by the recipes of the time. And another example is the Battle of Waterloo, that was presented, that is in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, and some researchers wanted to recreate the smell of the Battle of Waterloo, taking ingredients like the smell of gunpowder, the smell of horses, the smell of the earth, of blood. And so it's another way to adapt, to make a fragrant composition linked to the past. And evocation is a work of the imagination. So you don't really stick to any element anymore, except maybe a picture or a text. But then the work of the perfumer is imaginary, is only creativity. The source might be in the past, but but it's an entirely original work aimed at sharing a resolutely subjective apprehension of the source element. In order to make it clearer for the public, we've decided also to inspire, to get a visual representation of this, of the method used to reconstitute the perfume. And this model takes the form of a caveat diagram with 14 criteria, and it's divided into two hemispheres. The left hemisphere groups together criteria that depend on the presence of a formula or a recipe, and conversely, the right-hand hemisphere brings together criteria that apply to attempts of reconstruction that could be described as more evocative based on less specific sources. So to make it clearer today, I'm going to take 3 examples of the 2 first categories. So the first example is going to be Pino Silvestre. I've decided, I had this idea of taking 3 perfumes today that were all born on the Italian land, since I am in Milan. And so Pino Silvestre is, I guess, very well known here, and it was very well known in Europe. It's been launched in 1955. Thank you very much. And it was an enormous success. So it was launched by the brand Vidal, and you might have seen this video, this advertising campaign that was very well known in Italy in the 60s. So it's, of course, a woody family, and we weighed it very recently, thanks to Marco Vidal, the descendant of the Vidal family, who has accepted to share the formula with the Osmothe in April 2023. So it's very recent reweighing of the formula. I think you all have this feeling of entering a forest with, by a sunny day, with pine needles on the ground, and it's very evocative of a green environment. The video is about the famous bubble bath, Bagno Schiuma Pino Silvestre, that was launched in the 60s. And so it's important to stress that there is no pine needles or anything else in this perfume. The start is very lavender, very much notes of lavender, lavandin, and bergamot. And then you have this feeling of being within pine trees, but it comes from the juniper berries, actually. Here you have 4 key elements, key ingredients of the original formula. So bergamot, juniper berries, clary sage, and of course, oak moss. So the oak moss that gives the bottom, the warm bottom for this perfume. There were a lot of derived products of this perfume, shower gels, aftershave, the bubble baths, as I mentioned, and it's been an enormous success in the 60s, and you can smell today the original formula. As you know, formulas change over time because the regulation imposes to restrict some ingredients. Sometimes the ingredients are forbidden, So it's needed for the brands to change the formulas. So the Osmothe methodology for reconstituting an ancient perfume is called the reweighing, and this is the definition we've worked on, is a repesé or reweighing occurs when the perfumer is in possession of a formula detailing the raw materials, proportions, and techniques. It nominally concerns identified perfumes generally associated with a perfume house and a perfume creator. Because of the need for a formula and not a recipe, it applies only to fragrances dating from the end of the 19th century to the present day. It is based on the perfumer's ability to remain as faithful as possible to the original formula and not on a creative gesture. For example, if we try to draw a visual representation for Pino Silvestre, you can see this diagram where the description of the raw materials, of course, is very precise since it's included in the notion of formula, and the raw materials still exist. So we have elements about informations about the method used. So everything is very round at the beginning because we have all the informations. And the goal today of the Osmothe is not to sell anything. We don't sell any perfumes, but to inform the public about the original form of a perfume. So it's mostly a scientific and educational purpose that is used for this reconstitution. So in the Osmothe, we have many other examples. Most of the perfumes, as I already stressed, are made with this method. And when the other method is also to collect the perfumes that come directly to the Conservatory, to the archive, without the formulas. But on the long term, if we don't have the formula, we won't be able to recreate those perfumes. Today, we don't have so much time, so maybe at the end we'll be able to smell L'Origan by Coty, for example, a masterpiece of the beginning of the 20th century, made by François Coty, that no longer exists, but that was very influential on perfumers for a long time, and that met an enormous success both in Europe and in the States at some point. L'Origan was also what gave its perfume to the powder. And in the States, at some point, there were 3,000 perfumes, powder compacts that were sold per day with this smell. And that's why sometimes it reminds people of the powder of their grandmother or great-grandmother. So I invite you to come to the stand of the Osmothe, to the Osmothe booth a bit later, and we'll be able to show you, or maybe at the end of this presentation. We have also we have many masterpieces, and I can't mention them all, but for example, we have Le Fruit Défendu, the forbidden fruit, coming from the Parfum de Rosine, created by Paul Poiret, who was the first to associate perfumes with fashion collection. And so we are very fond of this perfume, for example, in the Osmothe, because it didn't have success in its time, but when you smell it, you discover that it's very modern, and it was really a forerunner for perfumery, and that's also what interests us about perfumery. And when you remake the perfumes, when you recreate them, you can smell that really have this sensory experience that some perfumes were very much ahead of their time. So Paul Poiret, and as I told you, many, many more, 6,000 more perfumes in the Osmothe. The second example that I wanted to take today is royal perfume, the Parfum Royal, Regale Unguentum, that we have been presenting for a very long time. Thank you very much. And the challenge here is to recreate a Roman fragrance. So we've been presenting it for a long time as an exception in the way, in the work of the Osmothe, because it's not reweighing, it's an adaptation of a recipe. And here is the recipe. So you have the text in Latin. It's taken out of the Historia Naturalis by Pliny the Elder in the book 13, chapter 2. And in this book that I advise you to read if you haven't done it yet, you have many informations about the ingredients of the time, of the Roman time, and also many recipes. And this one is very interesting. The royal perfume was designed for the king of Parthes, which was earlier an enemy of Rome, but at that time they wanted to honor him. And so they created this perfume, and Pliny the Elder, who writes everything, all the knowledge of his time, has given the recipe. So you can see that you have all those names, so you have to identify them, but you can also notice that there are no quantities. So there is a list of 27 ingredients, but no quantities at all. So when Jean Kerléo decided in 1996 to recreate this perfume, he had to work for a long time. He had first to identify all the ingredients, and then to get information about the methods that were used at that time. And of course, he had to give his own interpretation as a perfumer of this recipe. So he took all these ingredients, and for 1 year, he made trials to see if he could achieve something that was close to his knowledge of perfumery, to his balance. And that's another question: is it possible to have the same aesthetic in the 20th century as in the first century for a perfumer? So you have it in mind now, and you can smell it. Oh, this is a video about the techniques. It's a blink we just wanted to show you because it's funny. It comes from the Casa dei Veti in Pompeii, and it's been animated in order to show you what the techniques of the Romans were. And they were very sophisticated, with a lot of macerations in oil, in cold oil or warm oil. And so Jean Kerléo had to, the image has gone again, but maybe it's coming back. I like very much this picture. So the Parfum Royal has been reconstituted from the writings of Pliny the Elder, and also from the knowledge that Jean Kerléo has acquired, looking for informations, reading books, working with specialists about the Roman times and the perfumery at this time. So the result that you have under your nose is very powerful, very spicy, and we can mention some ingredients. There are a lot of resins. There is myrrha, opopanax, And there are a lot of spices. I guess you have detected that there's a lot of cinnamon. There are 3 types of cinnamon, and cardamom and ginger. And what is very interesting also in this perfume is that there is no alcohol. Of course, in the Roman times, there was no alcohol. It's been discovered and refined much later by the Arabs. But at that time, what would allow the perfumes to be preserved? That was the oil, honey as well, and you know about honey in food as well, the use of honey to preserve it. And of course, there was also wine, and wine has a part of alcohol that helped to protect and preserve the perfume. The perfume you're smelling at the moment is one of the treasures of the Osmothe, and it's been created in 1996, so nearly 30 years ago, and you can see that it smells like it's completely fresh. So it gives you very interesting information about the methods of the people in the Roman time in perfumery, how they would preserve those perfumes and create them. So to come back to our classification, this perfume is an adaptation. So what do we call adaptation? It is aimed at a specific perfume for which the perfumer has a recipe with all that implies in terms of vagueness about raw materials, proportions, and techniques. In addition to the information provided, there is a considerable amount of invention, experimentation, and creation. The term adaptation applies mainly to perfumery before 1880, as well as to domestic perfumery, home preparations, perfumes, sachets, etc. So I guess you understand better now what we call reweighings and adaptations. And for example, the visual representation for Parfum Royal could be this one. It's still a process. We are trying to define this diagram even more precisely, and we're working on it. But you can see that, for example, the proportion of ingredients is very low. The processes used are not so clear. We got information, but it's not so clear. And again, the goal, the main objective to recreate this perfume is it's a scientific and educational approach. But creativity is needed to be able to recreate those perfumes. So, Acqua Arabesca is my third example. Why did I choose Acqua Arabesca? Because it's an adaptation again, but it's an adaptation that has not been done yet. And I just want to show you how difficult it is to recreate a perfume sometimes. So today, Acqua Arabesca is, we are trying to recreate a Venetian fragrance from the 16th century. Where does this recipe come from? The recipe comes from Notandissimi Secreti dell'arte profumatoria, Secrets of the Art of Perfumery, that was published in 1555. And in this book, you have over 300 recipes. You know that in Venice at that time, there was a new interest for beauty and perfumery. And Giovan Ventura Rossetti was one of the first to make a list of all those recipes and to open them to the public. And in this book, there are more than 130 recipes of perfumes. Why was it in Venice? it's the cradle of a kind of perfumery as well, because at that time, you know that Venice was an enormous trade market, between, especially a crossroad between eastern and western roads, and there were a lot of ingredients on top of a new interest for beauty. This book had an enormous success and was published and reprinted for over a century. And it helped a lot to popularize perfume. So here is the recipe. I'll let you discover it. It's not in Italian, it's in Venetian, so it's an even bigger degree in difficulty. But apparently, it was a very important recipe at that time. That's why we decided to choose it. So let me try to translate it. Masterly rules for making fragrance and very excellent water, which, if you put a drop of it in a large vase of still water or rose water, will be all converted into admirable goodness. And this is water made at the time of the Mamelukes in Damascus, which is called Acqua Arabesca. So you see the imaginary behind it, the Acqua Arabesca linked to the Mamelukes and their aura at that time. And the desire to also link with the past. Take one or more large glass vases of your size, put in a third of the best quality eau de vie, and put in the finest roses picked before the sun shone on them, and put in these vases those that are slightly stained. And as you go down, add the others, also stains, and do this until the said vase is full, and put it in the kind of odor you want, as shown below. It's very important. And put in the kind of odor you want, as shown below. And I'm coming back to the list of the ingredients. We'll mention them again. So the list of the ingredients follows, and this mixture will come out like a sauce, and place it in the sun, especially on the hottest days, so that it's very fervent, and place the mixture in a tightly closed jar, and take care that it does not breathe. Note that if you place this mixture in a vase of common water or rose water, it will be most excellent. Provided you boil the whole well for the bain-marie, so that all must be liquid and that it be compounded into an incorporated mass, and this has never been vulgar. I like the end. So you see how difficult it is to read this recipe. In this recipe, you have noticed that there is no distillation, but it's not obvious, because in the rest of the treatise you can find distillation processes, recipes with distillation involved, but not in this one. You can stress that the recipe is articulated in two parts, and it's not so clear if you have to boil the whole thing together or separate the two parts, boil the second part and add it to the first one. It's still an hypothesis. And the list of ingredients, is it a prescription or is it a suggestion? You have a list of ingredients, but are you, as a perfumer, are you supposed to put them all or only a few of them and choose? And which one should you choose? So you see all the questions that are raised when you come into this perfumery of previous centuries. And of course, the identification of the ingredients is also quite a challenge. So in order to recreate this perfume, which we haven't done yet, you need information about the ingredients, but you need also to read the other treatises of that time, or other manuals of perfumery to understand what were the uses at that time, the methods, and then you can try to start something with a lot of interpretation, so you are still in the case of an adaptation. You have an old recipe, but you do your best to come close to something that could be what was the perfume of the 16th century in Venice. So here's the list of the ingredients. A closer look: muschio, civet, ambergris, iris, sandalwood, nutsedge, cinnamon, fiori di lavanda, lemon flowers, fiori di cedro, styrax, galbanum, nutmeg, clove, macalep, aromaticus calamus, chiro balsamo, zucchero finissimo, fiori di naranze, and orange blossom, and flowers of jasmine. And also benzoin, and you see that they are even the printing is not explicit. Why are benzoin and macalep on the side of the others? Are they supposed to be included or not? So if we achieve this goal, if we manage to recreate this perfume, the diagram will be around that shape. And you see that there are a lot of elements missing that we have to collect to find out with specialists, with historians, with archaeobotanists of the time, everybody that could help to find more information about the methods and the uses of the time. Because you think it's quite easy, but you see already the roses. What roses? Was it very clear which one we should use? You've seen that in this recipe there are some very fine details about the stained petals, but on the other ingredients there are no details. So the muschio, musk, of course, it's a forbidden ingredient today. So how are we going to do to include this in the recipe? Ambergris. Ambergris, you're going to smell it. We have decided to show it to you today because it's an ingredient that you can't find anymore, or very rarely. Thank you very much. But we wanted to show you a few ingredients that we will need to recreate this perfume. So ambergris, you know that it comes from the sperm whale, and it's a secretion of the stomach that floats on the seas, on the ocean for many days, and arrives on a beach where it's banked, and it's all this journey on the sea that gives the wonderful scent. Ambergris has been used since antiquity in perfumery, and at that time, of course, it was very much used. Ambergris is a raw material that has a very facety scent. You can smell the marine notes, the kind of salty notes, but also after a while it's more animalic. It becomes more animalic, and it used to give a lot of power to the perfumes. Another ingredient we are going to smell is iris. But for example, iris, at that time, was it the, you know that now it's the roots that are used, and they are dried, they are, thank you very much. They are dried for 3 years, and then when they're matured, they are distillized. But at that time, for example, in the treatise of Rossetti, we can find that he uses different parts of the iris. Sometimes he uses the roots, sometimes the flowers, and even the stem. So it's quite difficult to know, even when you the ingredients are listed, to know exactly which part of the raw material has been used. So you have to check with the rest of the recipes inside the treatise to know more about what has been used. So I don't know if you're familiar with iris, but that's one of my favorite raw materials, and this one is very rich. It's an infusion. I forgot to tell you that for the ambergris it was an infusion in alcohol. This one as well, it's both very strong, but also very mild, very powdery, a bit fruity. It's a wonderful raw material that we will add to the recipe when we'll make it. But with a special method, it's not a distillation, so we'll use special method according to other ways to treat the raw materials, to extract the aromatic compounds. For example, Chiro Balsamo, balm of Gilead, balm of Mecca, is mythic ingredients in perfumery, but that no longer exists. That is very difficult to find. So we are going to, we have descriptions of this odor, we have samples in some museums that we would like to analyze, but are we going to be able to reproduce the same smell? And even orange blossom, that seems to be very simple. Orange blossom is something that we still use, but at that time, for example, they would use sometimes fresh, sometimes dry flowers. So which one will we use? Fine sugar. Zucchero finissimo, I guess it's quite rare that there's still sugar in the recipe, in the formulas today. So why was there sugar? There are different interpretations and hypotheses about sugar. Will it give a different type of smell, or is it only to make the composition thicker, or is it to preserve it? You have all this range of questions that are raised. So recreating a 16th century perfume is difficult. Maybe, especially this recipe, you have the questions of quantities. Are they mentioned, not mentioned? What methods were used? What were even when they are mentioned, the quantities, you have to convert. And the conversion is not so easy with in those treaties. And you have the questions of raw material exhaustiveness. Was it an exhaustive list, or was it a list of ingredients that was open to the creative freedom of the perfumer, or even it was for the general public, those recipes? And was it depending on the seasons, for example, when you had access to those raw materials or not? Or if they were too expensive, were you able to buy them for your recipe or not? There are all those kinds of questions. If we compare all those diagrams, we can see at a glance the different ways to recreate reweighings and adaptations. And you can see on the left-hand hemisphere that there are a lot of information missing. So it needs the expertise of a perfumer who knows about the history of perfumery, who has discussions with a lot of specialists, of people working, researchers, who will add their knowledge to his. So you can have go to those links to get more information about the Norman project that is still, as I told you earlier, that is still a work in progress, and we want to refine our classification and the nomenclature. So, to conclude, the challenge of recreating the perfumes of the past is a real challenge. And yes, there is an institution in charge of recreating the perfumes of the past. And as you understood, it requires the expertise of a perfumer who has a knowledge of the history of perfumery. And the recipe can be different according to the methods used and the information you have about the perfume. So the Nomen classification is aimed to help the public to better understand the method that has been used to recreate, to reconstitute the perfumes of the past that are in front of you in museums, in exhibitions, since, as I stressed it before, it's very fashionable and it's very interesting for the public. But whatever the result is, it's always a very exciting experience to work on those recipes, on those formulas. And even for the recipes of the further past, of yesteryear, it raises a lot of questions about the reception of the fragrances, for example. What was the olfactory environment of a specific period or in a specific place, and therefore in a specific culture? It also raises questions in terms of creation process. As I mentioned, was a perfumer of the Roman times close to a perfumer of today or of the 20th century? How has it evolved, our sensory environment and also the creation process as a perfumer? Was the aesthetic balance the same earlier and today? How the ingredients have evolved over time? What part we know, it's very interesting to know more about all these ingredients, why they were used, the way they were used, the methods of extraction. We learned a lot, and sometimes we can even reuse ancient methods to create new raw materials today, and that's the case for some of you. And it also raises an important question: why in 2024 are we so interested in the smell of the past? Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to the Excellence team for inviting me today. And thank you very much for those who helped me with the blotters, Antolena especially. And now I'm very happy to answer your questions. And of course, I'm inviting you to come to the Osmothe booth to discover more of those masterpieces of the wonderful perfumes. De l'origan? Ah, okay, thank you very much. So you're going to discover l'origan, if maybe you've come to the Osmothe already. Yes? The most? It's difficult for me to say because I'm not the one who recreates the perfume. And actually, I mentioned it, but maybe too briefly, the person who is in charge of recreating the perfume, especially when there's a formula, has a very strict protocol access to the formula, is enabled to recreate the perfume, but then he or she has to destroy the elements he has discovered because it's completely confidential. It's still secret. So I would say, from what I heard from the perfumers, that all perfumes are difficult to recreate. But the most difficult ones, it depends on with the formulas and with the recipes. Your question, is it about the formulas or the recipes? The formulas, the question of the ingredients is always very difficult, but the most important questions the question in terms of difficulty is the existence of the bases. The bases, because they are hearts of perfumes with different ingredients, but they are treated in the formula as an ingredient. So you have the mention of a few grams of this or that base, and if you don't know what is inside the base, it's very difficult to recreate. So we have partnerships with several perfume houses who have accepted to recreate the bases for the Osmothe. We also have partnerships with laboratories, chemical laboratories, who have accepted to recreate. Not to analyze. We don't work with analysis, not GCSM at all. But we work with people who are able to recreate discontinued synthetic raw material, a molecule. For example, musk nitrate, and so on, that they have been sent to the Osmothe for us to be able to recreate the perfumes. You're welcome. Other questions? Thank you very much for your attention, and please come to the Osmothe booth.